Prioritization will either make or break your shift as a new grad nurse. Unfortunately, it's one of the hardest skills for new grad nurses to learn, but fear no more. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 2 principles that are going to help you prioritize your shift like a pro. So without further ado, let's jump right in. The biggest mistake that I see new grads make is they start with the patients who are unimportant first. So we need to start by defining what is actually a priority. That leads us into our very first principle. Safety is always your priority. So when you're trying to figure out who to go to first, ask yourself these 3 simple questions. May the patient be harmed if I don't see them now, later, or eventually? Those patients who fall under the now category need to be seen first. The ones who fall into later, you still need to get to them, but they'll come second in line. And those patients who need to be seen eventually, typically you can delegate that task to your PCAs, or if you like to go to them, that's fine, but they come after you've done everything else that's important. So let's practice with this example. You're beginning rounds on 5 patients. Who do you go to first? Patient number 1 is a 28-year-old female, status post hysterectomy, complaining that she's uncomfortable in bed and that she needs her room rearranged. Patient number 2 is an 81-year-old female with a blood pressure of 196/82, and she has all of her blood pressure medications due. Patient 3 is a 45-year-old male with an infected wound who has IV medications, a stool softener, and pain meds due. Patient 4 is a 26-year-old male with a history of substance abuse who's complaining of pain rated 9 out of 10. He's demanding that you give him his medications now. Lastly, patient 5 is a 78-year-old female with a long history. She has a feeding tube, multiple wounds, she's bedbound, and she has various medications due, including IV meds, and meds need to be crushed and put into her peg tube. Who do you go to first? So let's start with our safety question. Who may be harmed if we don't go to them now? If you said patient number 2, you are right. This lady is in a hypertensive crisis, and there's a chance that if you don't give the blood pressure medications as soon as you can, she could have a stroke, heart attack, or an acute kidney injury. So she takes priority. That leaves us with 4 more patients who need to be prioritized. So let's move on to our second question. Who may be harmed if we don't attend to them later? That's right, patients 3, 4, and 5. All these patients are not in an immediate safety risk, but they need to be attended to. And that leaves us with our last patient, who automatically falls under the eventually category. Now, her requests are important, but that task can be delegated, or you can get to it after you've done everything else. Now that we have that settled, let's go into our second principle. Start with the patient who's going to take the least amount of time. Trust me, this will save you a lot of time in the long run. Again, with our example, out of our remaining patients 3, 4, and 5, who's going to take the least amount of time? Patient number 4. Unfortunately, this patient is putting a lot of pressure on you to get to them right away, but typically those patients are pretty easy to deal with. You just need to do your pain assessment and then give the right medicine. So that's a patient that you can be in and out of the room. That leaves us with our 2 patients. Who is going to take the least amount of time? That's right, number 3. Not only does he have more medications due than our last patient, but he has multiple routes to be giving meds in. You want to keep in mind that the more routes you're going to be giving medications, typically the longer it takes. So that leaves us with our very last patient, number 5. She has a long history, a lot of medications due, a lot of wounds, a feeding tube. So that means that she's going to need a very good assessment, and then again, you're going to be giving meds in different routes, so you can assume that she's going to take the most amount of time. So let's quickly go over all that we've learned so that you have a good understanding of how to prioritize. Step 1 is to keep safety first. Step number 2 is, out of our later patients, start with the patient who takes the least amount of time. Now, I know these principles may be hard to learn all right now, but keep practicing, and over time, you're going to see yourself getting the hang of it. Ironically, when I started off as a new grad nurse, I actually learned the most from making mistakes in time management. So if you find yourself like me, just embrace the process, because I promise you, with every mistake comes a valuable lesson learned that is in turn going to make you a great nurse. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.